bachelor ashram or something. He's trying to introduce a fifth ashram, the bachelor's ashram. So, but this is not part of Krishna's system. And bachelor's ashram or bachelorini's ashram, well, there we have independence. We can do whatever we like. And it actually facilitates selfishness, because the ashrams is actually a system how to give up our selfishness and independence. That's why we are here in the material world, because we want to enjoy in forgetfulness of Krishna and do what we like. You know? So if we are not situated in any of the ashrams, then yeah, we can be free and independent and selfish. Yeah. So that's why married life is such an important journey. I mean, I myself was married for 10 years. I would never be where I'm now if I hadn't gone through this journey. Definitely. Yeah. So I don't want also shows that there's a little bit of pride there. I know what I want, and sorry, I don't want to get married. There's a bit of pride there. I know what I want, and don't you tell me what I should do. But if we humbly say, will it be helpful for my spiritual development to get married? Then that approach expresses a bit more humility, that we are willing to accept guidance, what is best for me, right? So in all spiritual topics, this is the approach we should have. Similar thing is there with children. Sometimes people get married and then they say, I don't want children. Same story. Doesn't matter what you want or don't want. Today you don't want and tomorrow you want, and then maybe it's too late. No, the approach should be, will it be helpful for my spiritual journey? Right? Yeah. And let me share a few other things, like we ladies are given a more emotional nature so that we can be good mothers and caregivers. That's why, we have this propensity to be loving, caring, nurturing. So this is a very important quality, you know. And if this quality in nature is not used in family life, then usually as a woman we feel a little dry and emotionally unfulfilled. So that's one reason why we should go through this journey of getting married. So our emotional needs are nicely used, by taking care of husband, of children, and so on. And of course, we all know women should be protected, because woman is seen as the jewel. She is the diamond, something very valuable. She is the Lakshmi Devi. So therefore she needs to be nicely cared for and protected, yes. So and we women are the energy to the man. In one conversation, I think it is, Prabhupada says, a man should work hard and the wife is the energy. Makes it very clear actually how Krishna's system is meant to function. Husband should work hard, and she is the energy. She is empowering him, inspiring him. Actually, we women are not meant to go out there and work hard, according to Krishna's idea. It's the man who should go out there and work hard. And we women should empower him and inspire him that he works hard, Yes. But today in the modern society, everything is a bit upside down. Yeah. Yeah, so in any case, that's the main reasons why we women should be married. So we are protected, we are nicely cared for, so we don't have to struggle through life, always defending and fighting for our rights. And, it's a very troublesome life, Yes. So better to be nicely taken care of. rather than having to work out there, compete with a man in the working field and all this. Very troublesome. And then we women lose our feminine qualities, you know, if we are out there battling, competing, we are not protected. You know, a woman who is not protected, she can't even allow herself to really, you know, blossom and unfold her feminine qualities, you know. So yeah, these are all good reasons why we should go through this journey. And also there's another one, that on the husband, we practice how to give up the false ego. Yes. And I have noticed that if a woman has never been married, then she has a very prominent and dominant false ego, you know, because she doesn't have this daily opportunity to accept the humble position and adjust and be flexible and. So, and if we want to go back to Godhead, we have to let go of our false ego. Yesterday, day before yesterday, we had a session here on the false ego. You know, so very important. Otherwise, with a big false ego, next life guaranteed man's body. Then Krishna says, okay, you want to be independent and dominant, so here you go, you get a man's body, and then you can be the leader and you know, so, and for the man, there's also a good reason why we should be married. Prabhupada says that only very Brahminically inclined men don't need that feminine energy to be inspired and motivated and empowered. Yes. And in Kali Yuga, really Brahminically inclined men, very rare, hardly at all. It's very rare souls, actually, very rare. So I would say 95% of all men actually should also go through this journey. Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, and I often see it, I observe it, you know, if brahmacharis, they're in saffron, but they may just not be so Brahminical, you know, and then they easily steal that feminine energy, you know, by preaching to the ladies and guiding them and trying to be the hero for them. That's stealing the feminine energy, you know, because by nature, Prabhupada says these things. By nature, a man wants to be the hero for a woman. That inspires him. Yeah. Only very Brahminically inclined men don't need to be the hero for a woman. But all others, especially also Kshatriya mentality, they all need a wife. You know, that empowers them to you know, rule the kingdom there. You know, that's why Kshatriyas used to have several wives, because the feminine energy of one wife is not enough to empower him to rule the world. Yes. Yeah. There is a purport in the ninth canto where Prabhupada describes these things. You know, so I was often wondering, why did these kings have several wives? Were they so lusty that they were not satisfied with one? But no, it's more subtle. You know, yes, one wife was not enough feminine energy to rule the whole world. That's why they had several wives. You know, yes. And I often see this, you know, when a man is not married and he's not a brahmachari, yeah, very often he's not really, you know, endeavoring to the fullest. He's not really unfolding his capacities. He's kind of just, you know, humdrum, plodding along there in life. You know, because if a man goes to work and he comes back to an empty flat, you know, you ask yourself, what for? Isn't it? What for? Or the struggle there, or just going back to mum, you know, being taken care of by the mother, you know, it's also not such a nice situation, you know. But if a man has a beautiful wife next to him that channels his energy in a very productive way, even in you know, the materialistic society, they have discovered that all the criminals, the drug dealers, violence, that usually comes from men who are not married. Because a woman channels his energy in an uplifting way, productive way. It makes him a decent person, you know? Yes, yes. And if he doesn't have that in life, then his male nature easily drags him down into illicit activities and crime and so on. You know? Yeah. Yeah, so it's all quite interesting and fascinating that not only we women need to be protected and in family, but also most men need that feminine energy to be empowered. So a woman can bring the very best out of a man, spiritually and materially. She can bring him to his highest level of capacity, you know? Yes, yes. So that's how, you know, Krishna arranges things that they perfectly complement each other. Otherwise, why should a man get married? You know, we could say from an external, mundane way, oh, it's only trouble, a wife, screaming kids, maybe better not. But no, no, no. You know, then he will not be able to really develop him to his fullest capacity himself. You know, yeah. Well, let me see if we have any question just about that. Do we have a mic?
You mentioned what a man gets out of a marriage, he gets inspired by a woman. But what does a woman get out of a marriage? You mentioned something initially, which I think someone's going to miss. You said she blossoms and her womanly qualities are fully expressed. Am I right? What else does she get?
Well, yeah. If a woman is unprotected, she can't allow herself to be feminine. You know, we can say, we can compare a woman to a rose. So for a rose to really blossom and open up, she has to be protected. Otherwise, if somebody touches her roughly, then all the petals fall. So that's why roses have thorns, by the way. You know? So and if she's not protected, then she will be like in the rosebud. You know, then as the bud, hold your mic differently because it catches, you know. In a bud, you know, she can be knocked around and she will not be destroyed. So then, you know, if a woman is not protected, she can't unfold her feminine beauty and qualities because she always has to battle through life, you know, very struggling, you know, to go out and work and arrange everything and all kinds of bureaucratic things and this and that and maybe legal things and whatnot. You know, if a woman is not protected, my God, she has to battle it all out by herself, you know. Or maybe the father helps a little bit, but maybe not. Maybe he will pass away and then what, you know. So it's a very struggling life. But not only that, I mean, also we women are meant to bring color and beauty into life, you know. So when there's a husband, we want to make ourselves beautiful for him and dress nicely and decorate and so on and so forth, you know. And if a woman is not protected, then very easily she is exploited and misled and used in some way, emotionally or financially or sexually or, you know, yes. And another thing is also that for women, this urge to have a man in her life is very strong. This starts already at very young age. I remember before I even entered school, I was 5 or 6, I asked my mother, how do you find a husband? So it's on the girl's mind at that age. And my mother said, well, you just find him somewhere. And I thought that was a really weird answer. And I said, well, is there a market where you go? I thought the husbands are always sitting there in a row on the market and you just go and pick one. So kids, they start asking, the girls asking about these things when they're 5, 6, 7, 8 already. So, and as a woman grows up, that urge gets stronger and stronger and stronger. Yes, yes. And that is also very natural. It's built into the female nature so that she gets the protection she's meant to get. Because especially young ladies, they're also very beautiful, very attractive, very charming. So that they have to be protected. Otherwise, some guy comes along and mislinks you and takes advantage of her. You know, yeah, yeah. And I mean, as I mentioned, we have a more emotional nature. So family relationships are meant to fulfill these emotional natures. That we have kids and the husband takes nicely care, he buys nice things for us, he takes us to different events and this and that, and there's some sweet loving exchanges, he gives gifts and. So that's all the duty of the husband. So if a woman doesn't have that in her life, it gets a bit boring and dry. Yes. You want to have a nice man next to you. It's completely natural. But it should be the husband and not a boyfriend. Yes. I mean, in ISKCON, in Europe, especially Eastern Europe, there now the devotees, the parents, they start looking for a husband for their girls when the girl is 14, 15, 16. They start looking because sometimes it takes a long time. And then even if they find somebody, then they don't get immediately married, but they just wait until she finished her education. But the mind is fixed. Oh, I have my husband. Because, now in schools, and especially in the Western world, the girls have boyfriends when they're 13, 14, 15, you know. And then a devotee girl, she feels all out of place, or everybody's got a boyfriend except me. One father told me this. Actually, he started looking for a husband for his daughter when she was 15. And I said to him, well, maybe no rush, maybe you wait a little bit. And he said, no, no, no. All the girlfriends of my daughter, they have boyfriends. So, and if I have a husband for my daughter, then she can say, okay, you have boyfriends, I have a husband. I know already who I'm going to marry. That gives her more confidence. Yeah, and then the mind is fixed and peaceful. I have this boy, and sooner or later I will marry him. That was the system in the former times. I mean, Prabhupada makes radical statements. He says a woman should be married before she enters puberty. It's in the Bhagavatam. And I mean, okay, for us now, this seems completely ridiculous, maybe. But sorry, I have faith in Prabhupada's words. Why would Prabhupada say these things if he doesn't expect us to eventually, after a few generations, get there? Yes, why would he put it in the Bhagavatam? Yes. So and there's a good reason because a girl, he explains it. He says when a girl enters puberty, she becomes quite lusty. And that's why her mind should be fixed. Not that she immediately lives with a boy, but the mind should be fixed. I know who I'm going to marry. and that makes her peaceful, yeah. But if that is not there, then a woman's mind is not peaceful, not happy, not joyful. And there's always this anxiousness, who will I marry? And this is also how the unchaste way of dressing comes in, because then a woman has to, bring attention to herself. Here, please take me. I'm available, you know. So, and that's why the women in the Western world walk around half naked, just to try and catch somebody who takes care of her. Prabhupada says this all in one purport. He says, if a woman is not protected, then artificially she walks around in mini skirts just to catch some man who takes care of her. And so Prabhupada describes it all, he sees it all happening, you know. So yeah, that's why women should get married. So we are, our emotional needs are nicely fulfilled in loving, affectionate dealings. Yeah, we women need affection, you know. There was this one story with Prabhupada where one of his disciples got married, and he was a brahmachari for some years before. So then Prabhupada asked him, how is your wife? Is she happy? And he said, no, Prabhupada, not so much. And then Prabhupada said, you have to give her more affection. You must kiss her. He said to him, you must kiss her. And he was completely shocked, because Prabhupada could see that he's still got his brahmachari mood there, and that's why his wife is unhappy, she doesn't even get a hug and a kiss, it's all Maya, So that's why Prabhupada said, you have to give her more affection, you must kiss her. So we women need this, yeah. Any other thing just about that, why we should be married? Yes.
You mentioned that the right person to ask is it good for my development program? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I understand how the spouse will be developed, but there are few couples who decide not to get married, not to have children. Right? So again, the right question is, will that help me? Will having children help me? So I don't like again how children can be for the marriage.
Yeah, it's kind of a little off the topic, but very briefly. Again, see, first of all, let's be practical and realistic. When a man and a woman live together, there will be sex life. And result of sex life, as a rule, is children. So if you get married and say, I don't want children, so how does that work? So you're going to use contraceptives, or you have abortion, or how, what? No. The way to purify our sex desire is by using it in Krishna's service, by inviting a special soul through Garbhadan Samskara, to take birth in our family, by being responsible for the result of our, sexual desires there. And that's how we purify it. That's one thing, And then the other thing is, many couples, I meet this all the time. They say, we are married, but we don't want children. We want to travel and preach. And I always say to him, hey, that's the next ashram. That's the Vanaprastha ashram. So first go through this purifying journey of bringing up children. It's a whole big internal purification there. So, and then when the kids are grown up, then you've got something to share. Then you have life experience. Then you can preach. But a young couple just getting married and being all lovey-dovey, how much power do their words and preaching have? Their hearts are full of material desires, So, yeah. And the other thing is also, especially for men, I have seen how men change when they become father. They become less selfish, because even in Krishna consciousness, there can be selfishness. My japa time, my reading, my project, my seva, my trip to Vrindavan, it's all mine, mine, mine. All right, at least it's used in Krishna consciousness, but it's still selfishness. But if you have a child, you have to park that. It's not just I, me, and mine, what I want, but you have some little jiva there, some little Vaishnava. And you really have to be exemplary. You have to, plant the seed of bhakti in his or her heart. So, people become less selfish. They become more exemplary if they take it seriously, because kids learn through imitating. So they see, did you offer this? Did you chant your rounds? They ask these questions, yes. They put the parents on the spot, when they're a little older, yes. And also for men, it opens more the heart area, you know. It opens more the heart, that there's more some room for affection there if there's a little child there, you know. And for the women, it's also very important to have children, again, to fulfill the emotional needs, because just the husband usually is not enough to fulfill the emotional needs of a woman. So married life becomes a little dry if, the husband is just at work, she's just sitting at home or also going to work, but a child is like a common project in Krishna consciousness. You have to really work together and serve and bring up this child in Krishna consciousness. Yeah. And I mean, let's remember the children who were born in ISKCON families, they continue from previous life. It's actually, in a way, you can say, it's a very powerful way of bringing empowered souls to Lord Chaitanya Sankirtan movement. Outreach. Well, these people out there, they have already so many bad habits and this and that. But if you actually invite a soul to take a birth in your family and really endeavor to give them Krishna consciousness, they can really make a major contribution to Prabhupada's movement. Yeah. There's still a lot of immaturity in our society, that we think children are an obstacle and burden, but it's the opposite. If we take it seriously, it puts a whole different dimension to our spiritual life. Yeah. Okay? So let's continue. We haven't even started yet. So let us, maybe very quickly, let me just share this topic. Sometimes we are a little confused what love is, And I mean, in Sanskrit, it's very clear. There's prem, there's kam. Prem is for Krishna, kam is lust, So, but in English, it's all love. I love my dog, and I love ice cream, and I love God. It's all the same word. So we get a little confused. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita it says that, love and lust are as different as iron is from gold. Yeah, so love is completely selfless. We are willing to sacrifice our very life to please the beloved. That's what Radharani is embodying. She is willing to give up everything, even her reputation and her very life, just to please Krishna. She says, I'm not interested in my happiness. All I want is Krishna's happiness. And this is the goal of my life. And if it gives him happiness, that I am suffering, that I'm in distress, then my distress becomes my happiness. That's love. That's Radharani's mood. So if we had that mood in married life, then there would be no marriage problems, if we had that mood. But no. So that is for Krishna. And what we call love in the material world, it's more emotional attachment or lusty feelings, emotional needs. It is not love, because lust is more selfish. I'm willing to do anything for my satisfaction. You know? So yeah, good to clearly understand this, because the soul is hankering for love. Because we all have a loving relationship with Krishna, but because we are in forgetfulness of that, that's why we try and find this love, that fulfillment for this hankering for love in other things, mainly in this man-woman relationship. But it's good to be clear that married life will not fulfill this longing of the soul for love. That is for Krishna, you know. But we need this married life so we are stable, our needs are fulfilled, we have these affectionate dealings but it's not selfless, it's not prem, you know. So just to be clear in this, because if we enter married life with this expectation to find that perfect and sublime love, we will be guaranteed disappointed, because that's not what it is meant for. I'm sorry to say this, it may be disappointing for some of you, but better to know this before, because I'm sure we are all mature enough to know that so many conflicts and arguments are also happening in family life, So, and sometimes even violence, and my goodness. So obviously, it is not love what we are experiencing there. Love is Radharani and Krishna, completely selfless, yeah. Just so we enter married life with the right expectations. Yes. So married life is meant, to fulfill all our emotional needs and make us stable in life. So our mind is fixed on one person. If that is not there, easily we degrade like cats and dogs. We have this man and that man and another man. This we all find in the Western world. I know one woman in the West, she's like Krishna's friend. She is not seriously practicing, but she's got 4 kids from 3 different men, never been married. That's life in the West. 4 kids, 3 different men. She's never been married. So that's normal. That's normal in the West. So that we don't end up like that, So that's why we should be married. I mean, in every religion, every spiritual path, it is understood that this man-woman relationship, this attraction, takes our attention away from God, right? And that's why it is considered sinful. So, and in every religion, we have this ceremony of marriage, that in front of the Lord we promise to take care of each other, and that sanctions that relationship that we find in any religious path, Christianity, Buddhism, Muslim, Hindu, whatever. So that's the understanding, that without marriage, this relationship is really distracting us from God, and therefore it is sinful, like that. Okay, so now let us get more into the actual considerations for compatibility. So let us understand, as we mentioned, a woman should be the power of inspiration to a man. He has to be her hero. And then if he is her hero, then she will take the more submissive position and give her energy to him by seeing him and treating him as her hero. So, and it's simply more natural for a woman to look up to a man and treat him like her hero if he is, as far as possible, superior in all regards. Then it becomes very natural. So the age difference, well, now in India they have this mood, only 1 or 2 years difference, but this is some kind of new westernized idea. Actually, I usually recommend people 5 to even 10 years of age difference is good. And that's how it used to be in India, right? What's the age difference between your parents? Your parents. Oh, well, there you go, 12 years. See, that's how it used to be. Because it's interesting that a woman matures much earlier than a man. A girl, when she's 18, 20, she's actually ready to be mother and wife, unless she wants to have some higher education or something. But a man, 18, 20, is a kid. You know, he just wants to play around and try it all out. He's not ready to be a father and a husband. No. Usually he gets ready to be a father and a husband when he's 25, 26, 28, you know. So that already shows 10 years age difference. She's ready when she's 18. He's ready when he's 28, you know. Good arrangement, you know. So the more the husband is superior, the more natural she will look up to him. So I usually recommend 5 to 10 years is good. Up to 15 years is no problem. When it's more than 50 years, it may be a little too much, simply because she maybe wants to still have another child, but he says, forget it, I'm getting old, you know, so, but up to 10 years, no problem at all, 10 to 15 years, yeah. Because, see now, especially with this man-woman equality, we women often compete and we become too dominant. That's actually the main problem in married life. So many couples, they come to me, they ask me for guidance. It's usually always goes back to the same problem, that the wife is too dominant and, and competing. And this will even more so happen when they're similar age, you know? Yeah. Then for her, very difficult to really, you know, take the subordinate position, you know. So he should be older. I mean, I know couples where she is 10 years older than him. I know even one couple where she is 30 years older. He was 27, she was 57. How disaster. You know, these things are going on, you know, and he was actually from Indian background, 27. He married a woman who was 57. But they also didn't, the marriage didn't last for very long. Then after 5, 6 years, they separated again, you know. So, yeah, I mean, we have to know a little bit, you know. So he should be older. He should be more highly educated. If she has one PhD, then he has to have two PhDs. You know, otherwise she will feel superior, you know. Yeah, so a man who does not have high education, he should not even look at girls who have high education. This will not work. You know, then he is in her shadow. She can't treat him like her hero. She will boss him around and thinks she knows it all better, you know. Yes. It will be terrible for both of them. So, yeah, he should be older, he should be more highly educated, he should be taller too, if possible, at least a little bit, because even that also reflects a certain mood. You know, if he is some little skinny fella and she is a big woman, there, you know, this will not be so good, you know. And then, if possible, he should also be spiritually stronger, if possible, you know. And he should be financially stronger, very important. If she earns more, that puts already the whole marriage out of place, you know, because then how can he be her hero? Then she will be more, you know, the controller, how the money is spent, and you know, yes. Yeah, so these points should be considered, you know, that he should be superior as much as possible in all regards. You know. So, and then there's, of course, other levels of compatibility. Well, let's ask about the physical attraction. Is this important? What do you think? Yeah? Yes, it is important because it's a conjugal relationship. You know, there has to be attraction there. Otherwise, the mind will not be satisfied looking at other men, looking at other women. So, some physical attraction and liking has to be there. But also, we have to understand there is also a deeper attractiveness, the qualities, you know? Yes, it's not all just the body, because maybe as a young girl, she's all slim and skinny, and then after a few kids, you know, she's a little less skinny, so let's put it that way, you know, so, or she has some accident, some deformation, whatever, you know, so we can't just then, she's not attractive anymore, I'm leaving or something. You know, so it's not all only the body. You know, there's a deeper attractiveness. Actually, I know one girl in Ukraine, her whole face is full of scars because, I mean, it's a horrible story, but her father put petrol on her and put fire to her because she is a devotee. He tried to burn her, yes, but she survived it. But she found a very nice husband, you know, yes, because he could see she actually has such nice qualities, you know, and he married her for that, not just for the external body, you know. So yeah, we have to also look a little deeper because sometimes a very handsome man or a very beautiful lady, they can be very selfish and cold and you know not have so many nice qualities. So it's not all just the body, you know, but some attraction definitely has to be there. It's not a brother-sister relationship. It's a conjugal relationship, right? Yeah. So, and then an important level of compatibility is that we have a similar commitment to practicing Krishna consciousness. If there is big differences, it will be frustrating for both sides. You know, if one person is very committed, wants to have Mangaladi every morning, and the other person says, "Oh, why be so fanatic? You know, once the Sunday program once a week is enough for me, or just Janmastami and Gopuranim is good enough." So this has to match. You know, otherwise there's frustration there. And also a similar level of austerity or opulence. You know, if one person wants it all fancy and cozy and flashy, and the other person wants it all simple, 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 you know, this will be frustrating for both sides. I once met one girl, you know, she got married after meeting her husband for 15 minutes in the temple room. I met her in America. And then she was crying, "Oh, my husband wants to sleep on a wooden board. He doesn't even want a bed, you know." And she was all in tears, you know. "How can I be with a husband who is just sleeping on some wooden piece there?" You know, so yeah, I mean, these things have to be discussed before marriage, you know. Otherwise, very frustrating, you know. Yeah. And let me see, what else do we have? Yeah, I mean, astrology, I usually find it a good way to start just by looking, could this be harmonious? But I don't give it so much importance. I give it about 20% importance, not much more. But we can say the more both people are fully in Krishna consciousness, the less important is the astrology. Because a deeper interest in Krishna consciousness sets another foundation to a marriage, to any relationship, you know. But if that interest in Krishna consciousness is not so strong, then of course the karmic elements are more prominent. You know, the stronger we give ourselves in Krishna consciousness, the less prominent is our karma. You know, like Prabhupada says, the plug is pulled out, the fan is still spinning a little bit, but not with full strength. You know. And another thing is that very often the time of birth is not accurate, and that changes often everything. I just had that recently in Europe. I put two people together, I introduced them to each other, and I had this intuition they actually match very nicely. They will like each other. But then they checked the astrology and it was not matching. But then he knew a very good astrologer who can recalculate the time of birth according to different events that happened in your life. You know, you can actually calculate backwards. So then they both did this, and both of their time of birth was really wrong. So now, with the new time of birth, now they have a fantastic match, you know. So after that experience, and I don't have the time to arrange this for every time that the time of birth gets newly calculated and all this. So I don't give it so much importance, you know. And I know so many couples where the astrology is not so compatible, but they have a nice marriage because they say to themselves, I want to work on these issues which make us not so compatible, you know? So, and I know quite a few couples where the astrology looks so good, but they didn't even stay together, they're separated. Yeah, so I know many couples where the astrology looked very good, but they got divorced. So astrology is not everything. What is actually much more important is that we have this commitment that we stick to our marriage vows, you know, that divorce should not even be a vocabulary in our head. You know, this should not be an option, that we see each other as Krishna's gift. So this is what Krishna arranged for me after really carefully considering. So that must be Krishna's arrangement. And then we simply are determined to make it work, to work on ourselves. So, you know, we actually can have a nice marriage, you know. So that is so much more important, that we stick to our promise, our word of honor, you know. Yes, it's a very important thing in Vaishnav life in all aspects. We don't just say something and then we say, oh, sorry, changed my mind or something. Once we make a commitment that we say we do something, then we have to do it. We can't just say, oh, something else came up. No, we have to stick to our words, right? Yes, and the small things as well as in the big things. So that attitude is so much more important than the astrological compatibility. You know, if we don't have that mood of sticking to our promise, very difficult to keep a marriage together because there's so many unexpected surprises coming in life, so many tests, so many challenges. So if we don't have this commitment to say, okay, this is what Krishna gives me, I accept it for my purification, I take advice, I try to work on myself, and very difficult to keep a marriage together without this commitment. You know? So this undivided commitment, very important. So do we have any questions about these different criteria of compatibility? Oh yeah, hang on, one other thing, family background that connects with caste maybe. So this whole caste topic, I like to bring this back to the Varnas. Because what is the caste system? It's some perverted form of the Varnashram, the Varnas. They turned into the castes, right? Yes. So let's bring it back to the Varnas. So, and as we said, the husband should be superior. So if a man is very Brahminical, well, no, let's say it the other way around. If a woman is very Brahminical, she should not marry a man who is more simple-minded, Sudra mentality or Vaishya mentality, you know, because Brahminical mentality is superior, right? Yes. So, but a man who is Brahminical, he can marry any girl, even if she's simple, you know, not so highly educated, no problem. Then she will be more submissive, she will look up more to him, and he will be more easily the hero, you know. So, yeah, so in that way, you know, we bring it back to the Varnas. But it doesn't mean that both husband and wife have to be the same Varna or something. You know, these days, rarely to find a true Kshatriya, a true Vaishya. It's all a mixture, but the main thing is he should be superior. So if she is very intellectual and Brahminical, then better she marries a person who is also in that mood and not a more simple-minded person, you know. Yes. And maybe a little bit we can see, you know, also family background in the sense that if she comes from a very wealthy family and he doesn't, that can also be a little bit of a thing that it's for her difficult to really treat him as a hero, you know? And then very often the relatives can be in her ear. Oh, your husband is so poor, he can't get anything together, and then she undermines, you know, his position. I've seen that, how the parents can really ruin a marriage by always getting in one of them into their ears and, you know, speaking against the spouse and, you know. So yeah, it's more, you know, he is in a more superior position if he comes from a more wealthy and educated family than she does, you know, like that. So do we have any questions about that? Hmm? Any questions? Come on, there must be something. Or they're too shy? Too sh-
Sometimes you ask a question and somebody else is also to the same question. Let me ask a question.
Well, this is also a little bit of an individual thing, you know. It depends also a little bit how much time you have to make the decision. If you're already getting older and older, you can't be too fussy, you know. That's another thing which I have seen very often, that often the girls can be a little picky when they're young and they're waiting for the ideal prince who is a great devotee and who's got good wealth and he's super good looking and he's simply Superman, you know. But then Superman never comes. You know, there's always something which is not so right. You know, there's always something. You will not find the perfect person, you know. So you simply have to weigh up a little bit and see, well, what other options are there? How long have I been looking already for somebody? You know, am I only 21 or am I already 38 or something? You know, so, and then you have to see, like, for example, I know Radhanath Swami, he advises his disciples, the ladies, that if there's not a nicely trained devotee man available, better to marry, you know, a favorable, pious person rather than not being married at all. Yeah. Because especially if she is in Krishna consciousness, then the wife, because her energy is so powerful, she can transform a man's heart. Yeah. Through her cooking, through her nice spiritual atmosphere she creates in the home, and through her devotion, she can conquer man's heart and transform him. But the other way around, if he is a devotee and she is not so much in Krishna consciousness, this is much more difficult. We may think, well, the wife should just follow him. But no, because his energy is not so powerful. Our feminine energy is much stronger, you know. And his duty is to go out and battle it out there in the material world and earn some income. So he cannot create this atmosphere in the home. It's the wife who makes a home, who makes a house into a home, you know, for decorating it all nicely and making it all cozy. You know, a man doesn't have that nature to make a home cozy. You know, yes, yes. Hang on. You know, so it is a little bit of an individual situation. You have to weigh up. It's not a fixed order what is most important. You know, you have to see. That's why we need a matchmaker. That's why we should not just go and find somebody, you know, because if we go and find somebody, we immediately get attached. We have the pink glasses on, we cannot see, you know. But if somebody suggests a person, would you like to meet this person? Okay, then we are aloof. We are not attached. We are open and we consider things, you know. So then with a matchmaker or with a parent or whoever is there helping us in this matter, we discuss, you know, we see, we need some guidance. Yeah. Okay, now you can.
What is the right age for girls to enter relationship? And second is how to handle the family pressure. If family has expectations, parents do have expectations that even if a girl, Swabhava is that she doesn't want to study more, like she doesn't want to do PhD or higher education, still more like get a government job, study so much, and only then in your late 20s get married. But the girl doesn't want to do it, so how to handle it?
Well, that's a tough one. What was the first one question you asked?
What is the right age for girls?
Oh, right age. Well, you know, Prabhupada says before puberty, the girl's mind should be fixed on who she marries. You know, so again, it's an individual thing. But I mean, see, basically it depends. All these questions, even the second question also depends how much you really want to make bhakti your main goal in life. You know, if you want to make bhakti your main goal, then you will not endeavor for PhD and all that, because you want to give your main focus, main attention to bhakti. Well, but I tell you frankly, you know, parents, if they really care for their children, then they want them to be happy, you know, and they don't impose what they think is happiness. Like, I'm coming from a pretty aristocratic family. You know, my father was a PhD in chemistry, archaeology, so many things. So first they were not so happy. I gave up my whole professional career already before I met the devotees, and I never went back to it. So first they were not so happy about it. But then my father said, actually, all I want is to see you happy. And if this Krishna consciousness makes you happy, okay, then I'm happy, you know. And he had a look at the books, he read a bit, and he said, yeah, I mean, this is like a pretty healthy lifestyle. I wouldn't want to live like this, he said, but if you are happy like that, then it's your choice. So actually, parents should have this attitude, you know, that we don't impose what we think is the goal of life. You know, so again, that's why we need a counselor. Hey, you listening? That's why we need a counselor who can also maybe speak to the parents, because we as the children, we cannot preach to our parents, we cannot tell them, but somebody else maybe can, in a gentle and friendly way, reason with them and say, well, you know, we all have to choose our life, you know. And I dare say, to some extent, we also have to be willing to fight a little bit for our Krishna consciousness. Yeah, you know, because we can't just live our life just to please our parents, you know, if we want to go back to Godhead, if they're not in Krishna consciousness. So, of course, it's a fine balance, you know, because we don't want to damage relationships. That's what I did with my parents. I made it clear I want to maintain a nice relationship, but I'm going to stick with this Krishna consciousness, you know. So, and if you want to have a nice relationship, then you have to learn to respect this. And it took a while. It took a while. But then my parents became so favorable. Last 20 years of my father's life, he went every year to India for 6 weeks, traveling all around South India. So favorably it became. But first he was not so happy, you know. So we have to be a little determined. Krishna is testing us a little bit. But we need the help of our counselor who talks to the parents, makes friends with them, maybe other devotees' parents who have a different attitude. They should maybe make friends with them and, you know, because also I have to say, you know, when a woman has very high education, very easily it makes her proud. And then she suffers in married life. I've seen it many times. And Prabhupada says it in one purport. He says the four principles of material advancement, namely high parentage, good wealth, high education, and bodily beauty, they are, so to speak, obstacles on the path of bhakti. You know, so this super high education can be a real obstacle, you know. And then you have to find a husband who is even higher educated, you know. And in bhakti, it's like that, you know, that if our main focus is on professional life and material advancement, then bhakti is a sideline, you know. It is very clear, you know. So we have to see, you know, we have to get the help of other senior devotees yes. See, a non-devotee, of course, thinks success in life, happiness in life, is, is dependent on material advancement. You know, that's their vision. So we have to work out what vision we want to have for our life. You know, yeah, not so easy. What else?
I have a question. She asked a question that, which sounded, she used the word compromise. I agree with you. Use the word compromise, but let's say on certain things we want to compromise a little bit. But where do you draw the line? Like, does a girl marry a boy who eats non-veg, who's a meat eater? No way.
Well, of course, it's not such a good arrangement, especially if he's insisting, I want to live non-veg. So that's not so nice. But if he says, well, if she cooks nicely, yeah, why not? I can also be veg or something. So, but to be really insisting in it, and especially if he's non-veg, then very often there's also other things, smoking, drinking, going out, partying, that kind of all is a little connected to the non-veg thing, very often at least, so not such a good idea. But then again, I know marriages where they were married before she met Krishna consciousness, then she becomes a devotee and he not so much. And sometimes, I was a few years ago in Turkey for Gorpanim. So Turkey is a Muslim country, so there were so many ladies there whose husband wants meat. So, and the gurus always tell them, if your husband wants meat, you cook him meat. Because often a man wants to see, is my wife doing what I want? Or has she got some other boss now, some Krishna, some Prabhupada, who tells her what to do? So, and then very often if she just cooks the meat and she serves him nicely, then she conquers his heart and then he gives up the meat. But here in India, there's so many people who are vegetarian. So, it's a little different when you're in Turkey or something. But I think here's no real need to marry somebody who's non-veg. Yeah.
So what I'm getting is that if you're already in a situation, you won't get into that situation. Try not to get
I think it can be avoided, you know. I think there's other criteria where we may have to be a little more compromising, like maybe we have too high expectations in our standard of life. Maybe we're expecting too much wealth because that also does not give happiness, you know. Yes, or we are too much, expecting the good looks or something. How long is a man good looking? Once he's 50, he's got his pot belly there and everything. You know, uh, you know. So more important is really the character and the charm and the nature. And not too much of the other external things. But vegetarian would be good. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Ji. Any any question? Look like they're all shy. Have a question. Nobody question. Nobody. Anyone here? Okay, Madhu. Answer.
Hello, Mr. Martin. Thank you so much for helping us. Martin, in one case, I saw that there was astrological match done, and it was done by two devotee astrologers. And in both the cases, the results were different. One was slightly negative, and one was little positive. And both the matches were done by devotee astrologers. So, what did we
not, not to give it too much importance. Yeah, see, because also that's another thing why I'm not so much into astrology, because often people are not so expert. They just call themselves astrologer, but they have only read a few books. It's like you call yourself a doctor and you've only read a few books, so astrology is a very complex science. You can't call yourself astrologer just by reading a few books. And then sometimes people do it to maintain themselves, to get some income. They advertise themselves here, I can do the charts, but they're actually not that qualified. So that's, yeah, the reading, the understanding of the astrology and how to read it, it's a quite complex thing. I once tested an astrologer. I gave him the dates of my sister who already left her body 25 years ago or something. And he couldn't even see it, and he was telling all kinds of things which were not even relevant there, which were not right. So yeah, so not so easy, the science of astrology. So that's why I'm saying I don't give it that much importance. But also one thing, let me mention this, because the question came up when a woman should get married. So one thing is, if a woman has been for a long time independent, her income, doing what she likes, then the longer a woman is in that position, the more difficult it will be for her to adjust and take the humble position and become a humble servant. You know? Yeah. I mean, Prabhupada in one purport he says the wife should serve like a maid servant. So here in India, people have maids. So actually the wife should be the maid for the husband. Yes. So, we should not just, yeah, expect that a hired person does everything. Sometimes even the maid, she does the cooking and everything. But now the wife should express her devotion to the husband by cooking for him, you know. So, and very easily when a woman has enjoyed independent life, then it will be more difficult for her to really adjust and take the humble position and become actually a humble servant. That's how she conquers his heart, by serving, by making everything nice and cleaning the place, decorating, cooking nice items for him. So yeah. But when a woman is independent, often I noticed highly educated women don't even know how to cook, you know. Yes. I remember once I was in Bangladesh and one one politician came to talk to me with his daughter. So, and she was 20 or something studying, and I'd asked her, well, you learn how to cook? And the father said she doesn't even know how to make a dal. You know? Yes, he was pretty disappointed. She doesn't know how to cook a dal. So yeah, this is what it's like in modern life, that the girls, they study, 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 and they have no clue how to make some nice items there. So, but Prabhupada says the most important thing for a woman is what? What are the two main things a woman has to learn to be happy in her life? Cooking and chastity, exactly. This is the two main things a woman should learn, cooking and chastity, you know? Yes. She should be trained. Prabhupada, Prabhu, just I'm repeating it for you again. A woman should be trained in two things, cooking and chastity. Yeah, that will make her happy, not the PhD, cooking and chastity. So the way to a man's heart is through the stomach. So if a wife can't cook, you know, this is already, yes, yeah, yeah. Once here in India, I had one couple, they wanted to get divorced, and he was complaining, she never cooks for me, and all the maid is doing, and yeah, and I got really heavy with her. I said, you have to cook, you have to do these things. And then, all right, she woke up to herself, and now they're happily married. But they already lived separately, you know. Yes. So these things are, very important. They seem like some details, but very important. Yes. So yeah, the more highly educated a woman is, and the longer she's been independent, it may be more difficult for her. You know. Yeah. Anything else? Well, if there's no more questions, maybe I'll take one more time the opportunity to tell you something about these books. Because many of these books are actually related to the topic of marriage. Spiritual culture, Krishna's divine system. In this book, I'm describing how this powerful feminine Shakti is empowering a man and inspiring them, and how we are not meant to compete. So this describes the whole man-woman dynamics. So for a woman, this book is a must. That we learn how to use this feminine energy, and have harmonious relationships with men around us, not only in marriage, even at work, in the office, or when we deal with Prabhus in the temple. We always have so many dealings with the other gender. So we have to know how to be empowering and inspiring to a man and not competitive, you know. And for the men, this will give them a clear idea what kind of lady to invite into their life. A woman who looks up to them, a woman who is not dominant, very, very helpful. Gives you a whole idea about this man-woman dynamics, how they're meant to complement each other, you know. And then here's sheltering relationships. That's about the importance of having a counselor. So any marriage problem can be solved if both are willing to accept guidance from a counselor and work on themselves rather than blaming the other person, right? That's a typical thing that happens in married life. He blames her, she blames him, and then nothing improves. So we have to accept guidance and work on ourselves. And that's where the purifying aspect lies in family life, because we have to work on ourselves. That's where we get the purification. But if we just blame the other person, then we will miss out on that purification. We will not work on ourselves. And our marriage will not be harmonious and happy. Yeah. Very important. So, and then false ego, our constant companion and troublemaker. Well, married life can be a whole battle of false egos. Who is right, who is wrong? Just see, I told you, and. So it's super important, yeah. And there's a whole chapter on chanting, how to chant, so we, get the power of the holy name. And also when we get offended, how to be forgiving. It's all connected with the false ego. If we get offended when we can't forgive, it means the false ego is hanging on to it, and we keep these grudges in the heart for 20 years and. So, and then entering the Grihasthashram, there's so many things in there, also about the importance of sticking to our vows and why to get married. And the whole list of over 200 topics which a man and a woman should discuss with a cool head to see, are we on the same page? And people always tell me that it helps them to go through these questions to get to know themselves. You know, where am I standing? What am I looking for? What do I need? You know, yes. So when you go through these questions, you don't only get to know the other person, but yourself also. And these questions come from Bhaktivedanta Manor in London. They have a huge Indian community and they have a very effective matchmaking committee. So they use this list of questions. So it's actually especially also for Indian people, you know, so it's not a German list or something, but it's an Indian list. I highly recommend you to get this book. And your parents should also read it, you know? So it's a handbook for matchmaking, step by step, how to actually help people to settle in a harmonious, affectionate, compatible married life. You know? So it's for the parents, for the counselors, and for the unmarried people. They should read it. And then here, the further preparation for married life is family life as an ashram, secrets of success, how to create this culture of bhakti in your home. So when you read this, you will also become more clear how you want to live your family life. Do you want to be on the casual and liberal side, or do you want to be on the stricter and committed side? You know, so first we have to know what it means that our family life is a suitable place for cultivating bhakti. And then once we know that, then we can decide, or do I really want this, or is this a bit too much for me? Do I want to be a little more casual and liberal, you know? And then you also know what kind of husband to look for. Or you may think, yes, that's what I want, Mongaladi every day, and. So then you also have to look for a husband who is in the same mood. And there's so many things in this book, you know, so much preparation. There's a whole chapter on physical intimacy in marriage, how to live this principle of no illicit sex life. There's so much confusion in ISKCON over this. And I did some research. I came across all these stories with Prabhupada, where he says things which are not in the Bhagavatam. People have not heard them, you know. And there's also the story where Prabhupada says you have to give her more affection, you must kiss her. It's all in this book. So the duties of husband, of wife, how he should treat her, how she should treat him, so many things. Very good preparation, because that's the problem, that people enter married life and they have no clue how to actually live a Krishna conscious married life. We need some training. So this book is actually a 15-hour course, which I give in Mayapur, you know, about family life. So actually, like Chaupadi, people who get married there, they first do a course. You know, not in many temples we have this, that people actually get some education before they get married. So they know what to expect, what are their duties, and you know. So very helpful for preparation, you know. And then the last one, family, the Vanapastasha, meeting death with joy. Actually, Radha Swami was once saying on a wedding, he was once saying at a wedding, if we enter married life without a clear understanding how to move on, how to move out, already failure. That's what he said, yeah. So, you know, people often don't realize that after married life is another ashram. Yes, when the kids are grown up, settled in life, then the parents are meant to move for the next phase, you know? Yes. So, and also there's a whole big chapter on death, what happens at death, how to prepare and how to accompany and support others. So grandparents are leaving, parents are leaving, So we have to know how to support them. So no harm at all to confront ourselves with this whole topic of death. You know, the whole Krishna consciousness is meant to prepare us for death, to meet death with joy and go back to Godhead. You know, so that gives you some deeper insights. So if any of you would like to get some books, then the last four are 350 and the first two are 300. Many people get the whole set that comes to 2,000 rupees, but you can just get one or two or whatever. And you can pay cash or with QR code. Yes. Yeah, actually, I didn't mention this thing that sometimes the ladies have this high expectations. Often I've seen it. They reject this candidate, that candidate. No, not good enough, not good looking enough, not rich enough. And then after a while, oops, no more candidates. You know, we're getting older and older and less and less candidates. So we can't be too idealistic. You know, we have to understand what married life is all about. It's not an eternal relationship. It's just for a few short years here, life in the material world, just to give us stability. You know, so we can't have a too high idea. Oh, I want to share you this funny story my mother told me. You know, I was telling her that these days, because actually the man-woman relationship, sex life is so glorified, that actually makes married life into something which it is not. That's behind it. Actually, married life is a very practical arrangement, you know. So once I was talking to my mother about that, and she was saying, yes, in her childhood, she remembered the main consideration for farmers when they get married, you know. So the farmer's son needs a farmer's wife to run the farm. And the main criteria for compatibility was whether the daughter, the girls, you know, fields were near the boys' fields, you know, whether the fields were in the same area. So that was a compatible marriage, just where the farmer's land is, you know. Yeah, so very practical. And my mother was laughing and saying, and these marriages were not even that bad, you know, because people did not have this high expectations that it has to be all the, you know, the lofty heavenly planet there, you know. No, it was a very simple, practical arrangement that the farmer's son needs a farmer's daughter to help him run the farm. And if the fields are in the same area, great, matches, you know, like that. And they nicely work together, you know. But now it is all made into something which is actually, it is not meant to be. It is not meant to be some, oh, you know, exciting thing there from the heavenly planet or what, you know. Yeah. Just as a concluding word. So please, ladies, don't have too high expectations. You know, especially also if time goes by and we're over 30, heading towards 40. We have to be a little realistic because if we want to have some kids, you know, after 40, not so advisable to try and have children. You know, so yeah, we should not drag it out too much. Maybe we're just expecting too much. You know, yes. Um, Usually the men are less fussy. You know, for the men it's usually more simple. She should be a little pretty and submissive and cook nicely and make a nice home, and that's good enough for them. You know, but the women, they have all these high ideas and so on. You know, yeah. Any other concluding question? All right, well, then we'll leave it at that. So I was hoping that more of you parents would come, but it looks like they didn't want to show up because, yeah, it's not as effective if if the parents don't hear these things, but what to do. Okay, thank you so much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki, Gaur Premanandi. So, and if anybody wants some books, then please come and we'll work it out. Hare Krishna.